I really tend to focus like a lot of my meetings, which fortunately a lot of them are over Zoom now or Teams. I tend to focus those sort of late morning, early afternoon before I have lunch. And I'd say later in the day, evening is when I can get a lot of my creative work done. When, maybe it's a little quieter and there's not so much noise coming through in text message and email.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess if your team's in Europe, it's similar because their morning or your morning is their evening. So
Oh, yeah.
I think that's smart. And I laughed at the after lunch thing because, as you know, here in Miami, if you eat some Cuban food, you're going to want to take a nap.
Yeah. And I lived in Spain for a year in college, and definitely that siesta there's something to be said about the value of a siesta when you can sneak one in.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Wisenetix Podcast. My name's Daryl. I'll be your host today. And today I've got Chris Bomgaars, the founder of EveryPig, here with me. Chris, how are you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Daryl.
Hey, no problem. Happy to have you here, especially since you kind of live in Miami like I do.
Yeah, not too often to Florida guys get to talk pigs, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Outside of like pork belly or like Noche Buena, it doesn't happen where there's pork getting roasted. But tell us a little bit about yourself real fast, Chris.
Well, as you mentioned, I live in Florida still most of the year, part of the year. Grew up in Northwest Iowa, which is how I eventually got into pork production. My dad is a veterinarian who started a mixed animal practice in Orange City, Iowa, who later got into owning pigs with some of his customers. And then eventually, after college, about a year and a half out of college, I joined him as a first employee in that family business and spent 10 years buying pigs off the spot market from all over the US and Canada, which is pretty interesting, fun times. And also just focus on business development, finding new farms for us to contract with growers, and really focusing on expanding the family operation.
Awesome. That's really cool. So you jumped into the family business and grew that. How'd that kind of lead you to EveryPig, actually?
Yeah, so really at the time, my dad's always been an entrepreneur, and he was in the pork production business wearing all the hats. And it was really kind of a business model more than a business at the time, that he was going into the spot market at the time, buying feeder pigs, so 40 to 60 pound pigs, placing them in contract farms, negotiating terms with packers and elevators. And, there was a lot of margin in it at that time. And I saw that and I said, Dad, there's more money to be made here. Let me help you out and let me grow the business. I was young enough and energetic and probably naive enough to just kind of jump in. And we had a lot of success in growing the business, scaling from, maybe 30 farms when I started to about 350 by the time I started EveryPig. And, the process was really cool of growing a business. And at a certain point, you realize like, whoa, what are we doing? We're a little out of control. We need to get a bit more efficient. And I think tough times in the economy will show you that, it's not just always about volume. And we started looking at areas we were losing money or maybe not doing great as a company. And we realized that we just weren't recognizing and responding to the pig health challenges from the farm in a time efficient manner. And a lot of times we weren't collecting the information quick enough, or sometimes we just weren't responding fast enough. And so that's when I started with EveryPig, really by digitizing that daily checkup that caregivers are typically filling out on pieces of paper, so we could have real-time access to it and respond in time to save pig lives.
That's pretty cool. So it sounds like you found, like when I talk about scaling a business and stuff like that, and we find the inefficiencies, especially when you get to like a certain point, there's like a chaos level, right? So you find that drift, you found that little opening there. So basically it's like speed of data to keep the pigs healthy and going, so you're not losing that cash in the animal.
Yeah, we had some really unique challenges too, because in the family business, we didn't own any sow units. So I was buying pigs from a couple hundred different sow units every year, and they all have their own unique health statuses and challenges. which really, can put some strain on the veterinarians and the production managers and the caregivers. And also, raising pigs in Northwest Iowa comes with some challenges as well, just based on pig density. There are so many pigs up there that diseases spread really fast. And so response time just really is a priority. And I saw a big area of opportunity there. And that was a big contributing factor to starting Every Pig.
Awesome. Well, that's a cool little story. Cool little story from family into Every Pig. I won't ask you what your dad thinks you do because you work together. But a little bit about the marketing side. How does Every Pig right now use digital media to build relationships with its audience?
By no means am I a marketing expert. Probably not an expert at too many things. More of a generalist in a lot of areas. And I think, especially coming from a pork production background, we did marketing for us was a packer negotiation. That was what and selling pigs to a packer, commodity animals to a packer. So I'm still learning a lot about marketing. And one thing I've learned since starting Every Pig is you can create a product, but if the right people don't know about it with the right messaging, it might sit there on the shelf. So full disclosure, I'm still learning a lot here on the marketing side. I can tell you, having a good website helps. Having a funnel built into that website where they can click through, they can request a demo, you can put them on your mailing list, keep people updated with new features, things like that has been pretty important. Companies like your own, we partnered with Swineit in the past to get the message out. That's always helpful. More and more people are coming online and listening to things like this. Also, LinkedIn has been a pretty valuable tool, especially for just expanding that peer network. I see more and more people in our industry spending time there, sharing knowledge and connecting. And lastly, I would say, in the last few months, we started investing a little more in SEO for search engine optimization. Basically, just making sure that if people are looking for any software for their pork production operation, that they can find you a little bit easier.
Awesome. Yeah, I also have noticed that LinkedIn, at least the past 6 months, I've seen quite a lot of people kind of really turn towards it and lean into it. And maybe that's just the state of the industry as a whole now. And I'm also seeing a lot more technology enter into ag in general. So that's a really cool thing to see, since I'm a kind of a tech guy and I like data. So you mentioned some challenges when you started Every Pig and why you started it. But what's something that is a challenge right now for you guys, and really how are you tackling it?
Well, we've got more than one. I think the big thing that pops up is just the resistance to change in the industry is something extreme. People are very afraid of change. And I think a lot of companies haven't necessarily created a culture where employees, team members are feeling like they could bring up a new idea. It's kind of like if it's not broke, don't fix it. And, I'd challenge the industry to say, like, is it really not broke? Because I think there are some problems like wean to finish mortality that continues to get worse in the United States every year. And the data collection processes for that really haven't changed much for most companies in 10 or 20 years. We still see major integrators that are 7 to 30 days behind on knowing what pigs died where. If you're 30 days behind on mortality issues, I can tell you there are other companies kicking your butt, because the best companies in the industry, the top 1-2%, now recognize not only mortalities in real time, they're looking at symptomatic data in real time. So there's a big conversion happening right now from helping the industry become proactive versus reactive. And Every Pig's really excited to be at the forefront, kind of leading the charge there. But overcoming resistance to change and old habits hasn't been easy. So we're really working on kind of honing our message, really listening to our customer and prospective customer base. And we do see the tides turning a little bit right now, but nothing happens other than maybe weather changes and market changes. Process changes don't happen real fast in the industry. So we're here to try help people move forward faster when they're ready.
That's awesome. Yeah. just based on that, it sounds like, a big piece of what every pig did, and you mentioned it in the beginning too when we were talking, is that instant data, whether it be symptomatic from an illness or, for me, if like I grow vegetables during the summer, I get really mad and I know when one's dying and I like go all over the internet trying to find something to fix that. So every pig really helps bringing that data right away so that, hey, instead of that cough becoming a pneumonia for, like us, it's just a cough and it goes away and everyone's happy.
Yeah, you brought up an emotion there, right? You said you got mad. And I think sometimes it's that emotion that really can cause the change or trigger an actual change. And that's really what led me to starting Every Pig. It was not only, when too many pigs are dying, you're losing money as the pig owner, but also it doesn't feel good. We're stewards of these animals, right? We have a responsibility to take the best care of these animals as possible. And I think, being able to recognize things happening immediately is a big key to improving the health and improving your bottom line.
Yeah, I love that. And you said one thing that really jives with me is like, we're stewards of these animals, right? So before I ever went into sales or into business or anything like that, I was a chef and I did fine dining. And there was a chef that I worked for who was very much about honor the animal, right? When you're cooking it, this animal died so that we could eat it and somebody could enjoy it or something like that. So I feel even in what we do now in ag is that's so important because at the end of the day, it's a life, whether it's an animal, it's a plant, it's my dog at home. I should do everything I can to make sure it's okay, especially if at the end of the day, this animal's going to give its life up to nourish somebody. So long range high five on that one, man. So kind of, and I know I don't normally ask this too much, but did you always want to start your own company or did you always kind of see yourself kind of in the family business?
I never saw myself. There wasn't really a family business when I was growing up. There was a veterinary clinic that my dad started and had some partners in. And growing up in the 90s in Northwest Iowa, having another child meant you got another employee. Which now I look back on, and it was a real advantage for me, I think, with the way I was raised. But I was raised, doing numerous different jobs, trying to help my dad, whether it was, going out and vaccinating pigs or cattle, to, helping to mix medications sometimes or putting labels on medications back in the day. There were a lot of different jobs in that business, but I think I always saw I had that kind of example for me of an entrepreneur. And that was always something that I had inside of me. First business I remember starting was C&M Lawn Care. It's for Chris and Mark, my friend Mark. And, we started a lawn care business where our parents incentivized us by paying all the costs, right? They paid for the mower, they paid for the gas. They just said, you kids get out there and mow the lawns, right? So maybe it was a little bit unrealistic in that we were pretty subsidized, but it taught us, a valuable lesson to get out there and start a business and try something and do the work. So I think, being an entrepreneur was always sort of kind of in my blood and around, what I saw for examples around me. But no, I didn't ever think that I would probably be necessarily involved in pork production. I think on the innovation side, Every Pig's probably a little more closer to what I thought I'd get involved in, even though I'm not a quote unquote tech person. The nice thing about the direction technology is going in now is like you can be a non-technical founder and get more and more done than ever before. So probably a long-winded answer to that question, but excited to be working in a field that I have some experience in. And if I don't know the answer to a question, I'm fortunate enough to have, a number of people I can ping really quickly and I can get an answer and really bring in that domain knowledge that's needed to create a usable product for the industry.
That's awesome. I love the subsidized mowing lawn care company, by the way. I did something similar. I didn't do lawn care because it's, as you know, hot here in Florida. Hot here in Florida. But I would have my mom buy a bunch of soda, and the school that I went to did not allow soda. So my locker became the de facto contraband come buy soda, and I made a killing because I charged way more than I should have, and people bought it. So
It sounds like a good hustle.
it was a great hustle until it wasn't, right? So, for me, I get a lot of my best work done in the morning, like early morning, because I wake up really early. My dad was a doctor. He'd wake up early, and so I kind of got that for myself. And unfortunately, even when I'm off, I still wake up early. So that's just where I do stuff. Do you have a time where you get a lot of your stuff done, or is it just kind of all over? When do you get your best work done?
Yeah, interesting question. So I'm more of a night owl for sure. Since starting Every Pig, our development team is in Europe, so they're ahead of us. So kind of the first 2-3 hours of my day usually is really focused on if there are any fires, putting some fires out, answering emails, and making sure I'm on the same page with the dev team. If there's anything that needs to be answered immediately. So that's kind of how my day typically starts now. I really tend to focus like a lot of my meetings, which fortunately a lot of them are over Zoom now or Teams. I tend to focus those sort of late morning, early afternoon before I have lunch. And I'd say later in the day, evening is when I can get a lot of my creative work done. When, maybe it's a little quieter and there's not so much noise coming through in text message and email.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess if your team's in Europe, it's similar because their morning or your morning is their evening. So
oh yeah,
I think that's smart. And I laughed at the after lunch thing because, as you know, here in Miami, if you eat some Cuban food, you're going to want to take a nap.
Yep. And I lived in Spain for a year in college, and definitely that siesta there's something to be said about the value of a siesta when you can sneak one in.
It's magical.
But yeah, those Cuban coffees afterwards can help you get back on track pretty quick.
Oh, they can. Thank God for culottes. We'll just leave that there. But kind of wrapping up here a little bit, Chris, and I'm a big fan of these because I ingest a lot of either business books or marketing books. I feel like learning all the time is a really important thing. But what's maybe one podcast or resource that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, it's not so much business that I would think about for this audience, especially. I really admire a lot about what Torque and Sawyer Whistler are doing. They've got a podcast called This'll Do Farm, and it's incredibly entertaining. They are pig and crop farmers in Iowa. And I think Torque was a former field manager, maybe at Eichelberger Farms. So they've got a lot of experience in pork production from a number of different angles, and they're a father-son duo. And the dynamic is really cool to see between those two. And I think, they're really open in sharing what they do on the day-to-day, and their personality comes out in it. So I'd definitely recommend for people in and around the industry, This'll Do Farm podcast. It's a great one.
Awesome. I even just pulled it up here on YouTube, and it looks like they've got some pretty cool videos with quite a lot of views for what I would.
A ton of views. They might have a couple of videos that are over 500,000 views or close to, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're probably leaders in our space in that area.
Yeah, awesome. And it looks like pretty good production. Definitely modern YouTube faces there on the thumbnails.
They're good. They're good. They know what they're doing.
Awesome. I'm going to check that out, actually, but great suggestion there. I'll kind of wrap it up with this before asking where everybody can find you. But if you could be remembered for one thing, Chris, what would it be?
I think I'd like to be remembered for leaving a positive impact on the industry and people around me. So part of that's professional, part of that's personal. But what I'm really driven by at this point in life is improving the industry that's given so much to me and my family, and trying to work from the inside out and help improve it as much as possible.
That's awesome. And you know what's funny? Every time I ask that question, I get a very similar leave a good impact on it for what it's given to me and give back. So I love when I hear that because it's such a cool industry to be in when everyone kind of feels the same way. And it's all about let's do the best for everybody.
Yeah, and I think a unique thing about the industry also is there's a lot of room for improvement. Agriculture is the least digitized industry in the world, according to a number of studies. And so, that's both a challenge and an opportunity. The opportunity is, man, there's not a lot going on in terms of innovation in the space compared to other sectors and industries. So I think there's just a lot of room for improvement still. Where maybe in other industries are just a little further along in that process, and there's maybe a little more competition in the area, but we certainly have room for improvement.
Yeah, I think that probably has to do, especially with the resistance to change we mentioned earlier, because we encounter that as well, where no one's going to listen to these podcasts. Well, they listen.
Yeah, I think more and more, and hopefully it's not too much of a sidetrack, but I think another challenge for innovation in the industry really is a lot of the pork producers, if you're still in the business at this point in 2023, you're a survivor. You are a survivor. Most producers are having a really tough year. So these people and companies are used to really tough times, and they're used to survival mode. They're used to high volatility when it comes to markets. And when you're in survival mode, it makes it really tough to think 2-3 steps down the road. So that's a challenge we face. We see top producers kind of getting over that hump and realizing, hey, if we want to address the rural veterinary shortage, maybe we embrace some new processes. If we're having a hard time hiring people, maybe there's an app that we could use that would make us not need 2 or 3 of these new hires and help us do a better job with the team members we have. So I think pressure creates diamonds, and we're really going through that in hyper mode right now in the pork production industry.
For sure. And I couldn't agree with that more. Pressure, when you come out of Survivor, and if you stay stuck in Survivor mode, you're right. You're playing checkers, and you need to start playing 4D chess and take those steps forward. So, Chris, rounding it out here, where can anybody find you online right now?
Well, I think if you're interested in checking out our digital solution, go to www.everypig.com. You can email me, chris@everypig.com as well, or find us on LinkedIn, both Every Pig and myself. I've got a personal profile there, so always happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, Chris, awesome having you on here and learning about you and really about Every Pig. Your insights are really incredible, and I appreciate it, man.
Thanks a lot for the time, Daryl. It's been fun.
Likewise. And guys, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.